Guess the old man's not so steady, Brad smirked, as 200 guests burst into laughter around me. My back was on hardwood, suit wrinkled, pride shattered, at my own daughter's wedding. But what hit harder was what I overheard later. Brad, half drunk, bragging to his groomsmen, 6 months and the deed's mine. He won't even see it coming. That wasn't a joke. That was a plan. What Brad didn't know, I'd already called in Carl. And the clause we drafted would bury him. Tomorrow at 11 I wouldn't just rise, I'd rise with proof. And when I did, the whole room would watch him fall. My name is Walter Pierce, and I'm 75 years old. Each morning, I still walk the cedar fence line of my contractor-built ranch, sipping coffee as dawn breaks over the workshop, where sawdust and oil mingle just as they have for 40 years. Since Margaret passed, my daughter Elaine became my world, and I've kept our books balanced to the penny, just like her mother taught me. My future son-in-law Brad Caldwell started showing up at family dinners, wearing flashy watches and cracking jokes at my expense, each dig at my age cutting deeper than the last. Thank God for my old friends, attorney Denise Howard and notary Carl Mendez, who've witnessed every signature I've made since I first built this place. I didn't hesitate to fund Elaine's $90,000 wedding, but watching Brad smirk in his rented tuxedo, something in my gut turned cold. But let me start from the beginning. Wedding mornings are chaos, even at fancy hotels. I stood in the corner of the grand ballroom, watching caterers rush past shouting times while string musicians tuned their instruments. My contractor's eye couldn't help but notice every detail, the precise angles of the escort cards on their silver trays, the careful spacing of the head table settings, and my assigned seat marked with a cream-colored Father of the Bride ribbon that seemed to mock my attempts to blend into the background. You ever watch someone practice being important? That's what Brad was doing near the bar, running through his toast with his groomsmen. His new Rolex caught the light with every gesture as he rehearsed lines about joining two families and carrying on legacies. Funny how he kept mentioning the price tag of everything I'd paid for, the premium open bar, the 5-course dinner, the hand-carved ice sculptures, $90,000 of my savings on display, and here he was, treating it like his own personal showcase. Simply exquisite, Mr. Pierce, one of Elaine's friends gushed as she passed. I managed a thin smile and a nod. For my daughter's sake, I was trying to make myself scarce, to let her have her perfect day, without her old-fashioned father getting in the way. The string quartet started up Pachelbel's canon, and I found myself remembering Margaret. She would have known exactly how to handle this, how to keep me steady when everything felt off balance. My phone buzzed. A text from Denise Howard, my attorney. Don't forget to sign the updated will before they leave for their honeymoon on Monday. Critical to protect the estate. I patted the fountain pen in my jacket pocket. The weight of it reminded me of signing construction contracts, back when my signature meant something solid and sure. I'd handle the paperwork after the reception once all this fuss was over. Remember how school dances felt, when you were the kid nobody wanted to stand next to? That's how I felt making my way back to my reserved chair as the DJ started announcing the first dances. But then Elaine caught my eye from across the room, and her smile, God, so much like her mother's, made my chest loosen just a bit. Maybe I was wrong about Brad. Maybe this would all work out fine. The cymbals crashed as the music swelled. I had just started to lower myself into my chair when I felt it, or rather didn't feel it. There was nothing but air where solid wood should have been. Have you ever had that moment when time seems to slow down, but there's nothing you can do to stop? What's coming? Would you like me to continue with what happens next? Note: stopped here as we've reached the exact moment specified in the instructions, Walter beginning to sit as the chair is pulled away, with the setup of both the public humiliation and ticking clock elements firmly established. The impact knocked the wind right out of me. Pain shot up my spine as my tailbone hit the hardwood floor, and for a second, everything went white. Then came the laughter, rippling through the ballroom like a wave. 200 guests watching the father of the bride sprawled out like some slapstick comedy act. You know that feeling when shame burns hotter than any physical pain? That's what surged through me as I looked up and locked eyes with Brad. He stood there with that practiced smile of his, all teeth and triumph. Guess the old man's not so steady, he announced to the crowd, drawing another wave of chuckles. Someone better check his drink. My hands clenched against the floor, knuckles going white. I've fallen off enough scaffolding in my day to know how to take a hit, but this was different. This wasn't an accident. It was calculated humiliation. Still, 40 years of construction work teaches you something about dignity. I pushed myself up, without reaching for any of the offered hands, straightened my spine despite the protest of aging muscles, and calmly dusted off my suit jacket. Elaine stood frozen by the head table, horror written across her face. I caught her eye and gave her the smallest nod, the same reassuring gesture I'd used when she'd skinned her knees as a kid or crashed her first car as a teenager. "Don't make a scene," that nod said. "I'm okay." The whispers were growing, though, spreading through the crowd like smoke. I needed to redirect their attention before this moment stained her whole wedding day. My glass was still on the table, thank God. I picked it up, ignoring how my hands trembled against the crystal. "To the happy couple," I called out, forcing warmth into my voice. "May their love build as strong a foundation as their hearts deserve." The relief on Elaine's face was worth every ounce of pride I had to swallow. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of clinking silverware and muted apologies from well-meaning guests. "These things happen," they'd say, or at least you can laugh about it. I nodded and smiled, watching my daughter dance with her new husband. Her happiness was worth it. Had to be worth it. But Brad was getting louder with each trip to the open bar, holding court with his groomsmen near the gift table. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, was just trying to find a quiet spot to rest my aching back, when I heard him through the potted palms. "Trust me, boys," he was saying, voice thick with expensive scotch. "In 6 months the deed will be mine. Old man won't know what hit him." The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. The humiliation of the fall suddenly felt like a warning shot, a preview of what was coming. This wasn't just about embarrassing me, this was about taking everything I'd built. I stepped into the corridor, fingers shaking as I pulled out my phone to call Denise. The band struck up another dance number, the bass thumping through the walls as I pressed her number. 1 ring, 2, then nothing. The screen went black. Dead battery. Brad's laughter pealed from the ballroom doorway, sharp and cruel like breaking glass. I slipped the useless phone back into my pocket, that cold warning in my gut now a screaming alarm. I slipped out through the kitchen, nodding to the bustling staff as I made my way to the loading dock. The cool night air hit my face, and I leaned against the concrete wall, letting my knees steady themselves. The music from inside was just a distant thrum now, replaced by the quiet hum of industrial coolers and crickets. My hands weren't quite as steady as I'd have liked when I borrowed a busboy's phone charger. Those first few minutes waiting for the phone to come back to life felt like hours. The moment I had enough juice, I dialed Denise's number. "Walter?" Her voice was clear despite the late hour. "Everything all right?" "No, it's not." I kept my voice low, glancing back at the door. "Brad's drunk, running his mouth about getting his hands on my deed in 6 months. And that's not the worst of it." I told her about the chair incident, about the laughter, about the growing knot in my gut. "Listen carefully," Denise said, her tone shifting from concerned to urgent. "That will update we discussed. It needs to be signed and notarized before they leave for their honeymoon. If anything happened to you before then—" "What do you mean, if anything happened?" "I mean intestacy laws, Walter. Marriage creates presumptions about asset distribution. Without updated documents in place, there are scenarios, narrow ones but real, where Brad could make claims through Elaine if tragedy struck, especially with that ranch deed." The memory of my daughter's face when I'd first shown her the ranch hit me hard. She'd been 12, running through the tall grass, declaring it the most beautiful place she'd ever seen. Now here I was, plotting to protect it from her own husband. "When do you need me?" I asked, pushing the memory aside. "Monday 9 a.m. sharp at my office. That's cutting it close. Their flight's at noon, right?" "Right." I checked my watch. "That's less than 36 hours. Don't let that paperwork out of your sight until then," she warned. "And Walter, be careful." I ended the call and immediately dialed Carl. He'd been my go-to notary for decades, watched me sign everything from building permits to Margaret's final documents. More importantly, he was a friend who'd understand the urgency. "Walter?" Carl's voice was warm, kitchen noises in the background. "Aren't you supposed to be at a wedding?" "I am. Listen, I need a favor. Can you meet me in the hotel lounge tonight?" There was a pause, then the sound of a stove being turned off. "Give me 20 minutes. I'll bring my stamp and seals." Relief washed through me. Carl, I owe you. 40 years of friendship, you don't owe me anything. Besides, I never liked that Brad fellow. I couldn't help but smile. Carl had always been a good judge of character. The walk back through. The kitchen felt lighter somehow. Having a plan, having allies, it steadied me. I made my way back to the head table just as Brad was clinking his glass for another toast. You know, he announced to the crowd, that artificial smile plastered across his face, my father-in-law here had a bit of a senior moment earlier. More laughter rippled through the room. But don't worry, folks. Once Elaine and I are back from Maui, we'll make sure he's well, taken care of. My jaw clenched so tight I could hear my teeth creak. The band, thank God, struck up the music for the cake cutting before he could say more. I patted my jacket pocket, feeling the reassuring outline of my pen, the same one I'd used to sign every contract, every deed, every important document for the past 30 years. I stood, ready to slip away to meet Carl in the lounge, when the maitre d' appeared in the doorway. His face was apologetic as he gestured me over. "Mr. Pierce, I have a message for you." The maitre d' shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with his message. "Mr. Caldwell requested the after-party lounge be limited to immediate family only. He suggested you might be more comfortable waiting in the main lobby." My throat tightened. Of course he had. "I see. I can have someone escort you. That won't be necessary." I managed what I hoped was a dignified nod. "Thank you." You ever notice how a hotel lobby can feel like the loneliest place in the world? All that polished marble and soft music, designed to make you feel welcome, can turn mighty cold when you're not wanted. I found a corner chair and pulled out my phone to text Carl about meeting somewhere else. Message failed to send. I frowned, tried again. Same result. When I checked my account, there it was, in red. Payment declined. Service suspended. That's when it hit me. During the wedding planning, Brad had helped coordinate all the vendor payments through my accounts. Must have given him just the access he needed to start meddling. I could almost hear his voice. "Oh, there must be some mix-up with the cards. These things happen to older folks. Remember that feeling when you were a kid and the power went out? That moment when you realize how much you took for granted? That's what it feels like when someone cuts your financial lifeline. Everything you thought was simple suddenly isn't." I opened my rideshare app, thinking I could at least get to Carl's office. It wasn't far, maybe 15 minutes. But the payment wouldn't go through there either. I tried a second card. Same result. The young woman at the front desk gave me a sympathetic look when I asked about calling a cab. "We can add it to your room charge, Mr. Pierce." "I'd prefer to pay cash," I said, reaching for my billfold. But when I opened it, reality hit again. Between tips for the catering staff, the valet team, and all the other hands that make a wedding run smooth, I was down to my last $20. Rain started spattering against the revolving door's glass, creating little rivers that caught the plaza lights. The weather matched my mood perfectly. I thought about going back upstairs, asking Elaine for help, but I could already picture how that would play out, Brad swooping in, all concern and condescension. "Walter, you should have said something. Here, let me take care of that for you." No, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. More importantly, I wouldn't spoil my daughter's night with family drama. She deserved at least one evening of perfect memories. I found the side exit, the one the cleaning staff used. My knee, the one I'd wrenched in that chair stunt, protested as I started down the service stairs. Each step sent a little shock of pain up my leg, but I kept moving. Carl's office was, 20 blocks? Through the rain, with a bad knee. Not ideal, but I'd walked further in worse weather back in my contracting days. Pushing open the heavy fire door, I stepped into the alley. The rain had picked up, drumming against the metal dumpsters. My suit wasn't made for this kind of weather, but it wouldn't be the first time I'd ruined good clothes for the right reason. I'd made it about 3 steps when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. For just a moment, I let myself remember working in weather like this, decades ago. The smell of wet cement, the sound of rain on scaffold tops, that bone-deep satisfaction of knowing every drop of water would test your work, and your work would hold. My hands knew what real work felt like. Brad would never understand that. I stared at the buzzing phone, water already soaking through my jacket. In this business of living, you learn to recognize the moments that matter, the ones where your next move sets everything in motion. This felt like one of those moments. The phone kept buzzing in my wet hand. The unknown number flashed across my wet screen. Hello? Getting forgetful in your old age? A voice I recognized as one of Brad's groomsmen, the tall one with the expensive watch. Brad says you should sign over the ranch now before you forget your own name. I ended the call without a word. Funny how insults hit different when you're already soaked to the bone. They either sink deeper or slide right off. This one just made me walk faster. The rain drummed steady now, turning storefront signs into watery blurs. My shoes, Italian leather my daughter had insisted on for the wedding, were probably ruined. But good shoes were a small price to pay for what I needed to do tonight. You ever notice how a city changes after midnight? All those empty sidewalks and traffic lights blinking yellow to nobody. Makes a man feel like he's the last person alive sometimes. My knee kept up its argument with every step, but I'd learned long ago that pain usually has something to teach you. Tonight's lesson was about endurance. The neon sign for O'Malley's Lounge flickered pink and blue through the rain. Carl Mendez stood under the awning, briefcase tucked under his arm like always. In 30 years of friendship, I'd never seen him without it. Walter, he nodded, then got a better look at me. Jesus, you walked here. Seemed like a nice night for it. He didn't smile. Carl never wasted time on pleasantries when there was work to be done. We found a small table in the back, far from the handful of late-night drinkers. The tabletop was sticky with old beer, but Carl spread out his manila folder like it was a mahogany desk. I've drafted 3 instruments, he said, voice low. First is a life estate reservation. Keeps you in control of the property while you're alive. Second, transfer on death constraints that specify exactly how and when assets move. Third, and this is important, a no assignment clause means the rights can't be transferred to anyone else. I leaned in, studying the papers. My reading glasses were back at the hotel, but I'd reviewed enough contracts in my life to get the gist. Will it hold? With Denise Howard backing it. Like concrete. Carl pulled out his notary stamp. These are preliminary drafts. Signing them now establishes intent and timestamps everything. Denise will have the final versions ready Monday morning. The lounge's old ceiling fan creaked above us, spinning shadows across the papers. I thought about Brad's smirk when he'd pulled that chair away. About the cancelled cards and the phone call. Each small humiliation like a brick in a wall being built around me. But walls, I knew walls. Built them my whole life. And the thing about walls is they work both ways. They can trap you, or they can protect you. All depends on who's doing the building. I signed each draft, Carl's stamp making it official with that solid thunk I'd always liked. The sound of business being done right. 9 a.m. sharp Monday, Carl reminded me, tucking everything away. Denise's office. I'll be there. I stood, my suit still dripping. Thank you, Carl. I mean it. He just nodded. Some friendships run too deep for extra words. The walk back to the hotel took twice as long. My knee had stiffened up and the rain had turned cold, but I felt steadier with each step. Amazing what a little paperwork can do for a man's spine. I used the service stairs again, not wanting to risk running into anyone from the wedding party. But when I reached my room and tried the key card, the little light stayed red. Down at the front desk, a young man with an apologetic smile told me, "I'm sorry, sir. The groom requested all access be reset for security purposes." That familiar heat of humiliation started coiling in my gut. But this time, I felt something else too, something harder. I looked at the lobby's oversized chairs, picked one facing the entrance, and settled in. Could I get a wake-up call? I asked the desk clerk. 5 a.m. should do it. He nodded, probably used to all sorts of strange requests in a hotel this size. I leaned back, set my own phone alarm as backup, and closed my eyes. The chair wasn't comfortable, but I'd slept in worse places during my contracting days. Besides, discomfort has a way of keeping you sharp, and sharp was exactly what I needed to be. The lobby chair had done my back no favors. I woke at 5:30, with a neck like rusted hinges and joints that creaked louder than my workshop door. Funny how age sneaks up on you. One day you're carrying lumber up 3 stories, the next you're wondering if you'll make it off a hotel chair. The lobby bathroom wasn't much, but I'd cleaned up in worse places during my contracting days. The mirror showed me what I already knew: rumpled suit, tired eyes, and that stubborn set to my jaw Margaret used to tease me about. "There's that pierced determination," she'd say, smoothing my collar. "Just remember, it's not always about winning, love. But this morning it had to be. I checked my phone again. Still no service. Had to use the lobby house phone, punching in my daughter's cell number from memory. She answered on the fourth ring, voice thick with sleep. "Dad? What's wrong?" "Nothing wrong, sweetheart. Just hoping we could have breakfast. Just us." I kept my tone light, casual. "That little cafe downstairs opens at 6. The pause stretched longer than it should have. "I don't know, Dad. Brad says you've been confused lately. Angry about all the changes." My throat tightened. Confused. I'd balanced my books to the penny just last week. Could still recite every property line measurement on the ranch. But arguing would only prove Brad's point. 30 minutes, I said softly. "That's all I'm asking." Another pause. "Okay, let me get dressed." The cafe was empty except for a sleepy waitress and a muted TV mounted in the corner. My daughter arrived looking beautiful but tense, her new wedding ring catching the morning light. "Coffee?" I asked. She nodded and I ordered for both of us. Black for me, cream and sugar for her, just like always. "There's something important we need to discuss," I started once the waitress left. "About the will and Monday's meeting with Denise." "Dad, please let me finish. Last night at the reception I overheard Brad talking about getting the deed within 6 months. And with the way the current will is structured," her phone buzzed. Her eyes dropped to it immediately, thumbs hovering over the screen as message bubbles popped up one after another. I didn't need to see them to know who they were from. "Brad says you're imagining things," she said, still staring at her phone. "He says you've been making accusations, trying to cause problems. I'm suggesting we pause the honeymoon until Monday morning. Just long enough to sign the updated documents with Denise, that's all." She looked up then, but not quite at me. "The flowers," she said suddenly. "I need to check on the brunch arrangements. The flowers weren't right yesterday." "Sweetheart." But she was already standing, gathering her purse. "I'll think about it, Dad, I promise. I need to fix the flowers." I watched her hurry away, her coffee untouched. The ache in my chest had nothing to do with sleeping in a chair. Touching, family moment. I didn't jump at Brad's voice right behind me, though it took effort. He pulled out my daughter's empty chair and sat, leaning in close enough that only I could hear. "Here's how this works," he said, his practiced smile never wavering. "Either you sign the ranch over to me, or you'll be cut out of your own family photos. No graduations, no holidays, no grandkids. Your choice." I met his gaze steadily, remembering every contract, negotiation I'd ever won. "That's quite an offer, Brad. Let me think on it." He stood, straightening his designer jacket. "Don't think too long, old man. Time's not on your side." I waited until he left before pulling out my phone to call Denise. Whatever we'd planned for Monday needed to be doubled down, fortified, made absolutely. The cafe TV's closed captioning caught my eye. Something about county clerk filings. The news ticker caught my eye mid-reach for my phone. County clerk alert. Rush deed filings available Saturday due to system maintenance Sunday. I froze, memories of countless permit rushes flooding back. 20 years of construction had taught me one thing. When systems go down, paperwork gets interesting. I dialed the clerk's office, not really expecting an answer on a weekend, but after 4 rings, a tired voice picked up. "County clerk's office, this is Marion." "Marion, Walter Pierce here. I'm seeing something about rush filings today." "Yes, sir, limited windows until 2 p.m. due to tomorrow's maintenance. Mainly for the real estate folks who can't wait till Monday." She stifled a yawn. "But we're here if you need us." My heart picked up speed. "I do need you. Record search on my own property, if possible. We can do that, though it's first come, first served today." I thanked her and hung up, my mind already racing. The hotel was a good 20 minutes from downtown, and I didn't have time to wait for my cards to get sorted. Then I remembered Carl had slipped me an envelope last night, insisting I keep it for emergencies. "Just in case," he'd said with that knowing look of his. I pulled out the envelope. 5 crisp hundreds. Bless that man. Within minutes, I'd flagged down a cab and was headed downtown through the constant drizzle that had plagued the wedding. The normally quiet Saturday government district was anything but. A line of suits clutching file folders stretched from the clerk's office entrance, all wearing that special impatience unique to realtors on deadline. I took my place at the end, my dress shoes from yesterday already soaking through. The line shuffled forward slowly as Marion and what looked like 2 other staff members processed paperwork with mechanical efficiency. 40 minutes later, I reached the counter. Marion looked up, recognition flashing across her tired face. "Mr. Pierce, what can we help you with?" "Record search, please. Pierce Ranch, Highway 23. I slid over my written parcel number. She nodded and disappeared into the back room. The waiting felt endless. When she returned, she was frowning at her computer screen. "I'll need to see some ID before I can release these images, Mr. Pierce." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. I handed over my driver's license, watching as she compared it carefully to whatever was on her screen. Finally, she turned the monitor toward me. "Is this what you're looking for?" The image loaded, and all the air left my lungs at once. There it was, a transfer deed for my ranch, complete with my signature at the bottom. Except, that is not my signature. The words came out as barely a whisper. Marion leaned forward. "I'm sorry? That signature, I didn't sign this." My voice was stronger now, even as I felt the color draining from my face. "When was this filed?" She tapped a spot on the screen. 2 days ago, Thursday afternoon." I stared at the timestamp, 2:47 p.m. Thursday. I remembered exactly where I'd been, reviewing seating charts with my daughter while Brad handled the paperwork details with the wedding planner. The same Brad who'd had access to every contract I'd signed for deposits and vendors. The same Brad who'd been so confident about getting the deed. The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. He hadn't been waiting for Monday's meeting at all. He'd already played his hand. A forged transfer filed quietly before the wedding, before anyone would think to check. I gripped the counter edge, steadying myself as I studied the document more closely. The notary stamp caught my eye. Not Carl's familiar seal, but some name I'd never seen before. Every detail perfectly legal-looking to an untrained eye. Marion watched me with growing concern. "Mr. Pierce, are you all right?" Steadying the ship. "You know that feeling when your whole world tilts sideways?" When I stared at that forged signature, it was like someone had yanked the floor out from under me all over again. Only this time, there wasn't just laughter. There was the very real possibility I'd lose everything I'd spent my life building. My palms were tingling, and the fluorescent lights in the clerk's office suddenly seemed too bright. I'd dealt with setbacks before, construction delays, permit hassles, even that mess with the foundation settling back in '82. But this was different. This was someone trying to steal, not just my property, but my legacy. I fumbled for my phone, almost dropping it twice before I got Carl on speaker. Good old Carl. He answered on the first ring like he always did. "Walter, what's happening?" "Carl." My voice cracked a bit. "I'm at the county clerk's. There's a transfer deed here with my signature on it. Filed Thursday." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then Carl's voice, steady as ever. "Marion, is that you there?" "Yes, Mr. Mendez," she answered, leaning toward the phone. "Please note in the system that there's a pending fraud challenge on this filing, and if you could print a copy for Walter—" Marion was already nodding, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The printer hummed to life behind her. I took photos of everything, the forged signature, the filing stamp, that unfamiliar notary seal. My hands were shaking so bad I had to take some shots twice. The weight of it all was crushing down, on me, and for a moment I just wanted to give up. Let Brad have it. Let it all go. "Carl," I said quietly, "I don't know if I've got another fight in me. Listen to me, Walter." His voice got that same tone he used when we were reviewing contract language, firm but kind. "You built this ranch twice, once with lumber and nails and once with numbers in your ledger. You can build it again. We've got something he doesn't know about. The hidden clause, of course. Last night, while Brad thought he had me trapped at the hotel, Carl and I had been working on more than just standard protections. We'd slipped in something special, a trigger clause that would void any attempt at pre-execution transfer and expose the perpetrator to criminal charges. I felt my hands steady as I emailed the photos to Denise. She'd know exactly what to do with them. "Carl," I said, "let's confirm that clause 1. More time." He didn't even need to check his papers. "Any attempt to transfer the property prior to proper execution of the new documents automatically voids the transfer and triggers a criminal fraud investigation. It's ironclad, Walter. We made sure of that." I nodded, a plan forming. "Time to bring this home. Can you make it to the hotel tomorrow at 11? Family brunch. I'll be there." I sent a quick text to my daughter. "Special gift. Read through tomorrow at brunch, 11 a.m. Please make sure Brad attends." Then I copied the same message to Brad's number, knowing he wouldn't be able to resist anything involving gifts. The sun was setting by the time I made it back to the hotel. I stood in the lobby watching the elevator numbers climb, the printed deed feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my pocket. My eyes were burning from exhaustion, but my mind was clear. When I stepped out onto the bridal floor, the corridor seemed longer than usual. I was halfway down it when Brad swung open the suite door, filling the frame with that smug confidence of his. I could see my daughter behind him, still in her wedding dress, mascara smudged from what looked like tears. Brad's shirt was untucked, his bow tie hanging loose, and he had that same mean glint in his eye I'd seen right before he pulled my chair out. The stench of beer wafted from Brad's breath as he swayed in the doorway, his eyes fixed on the folder tucked under my arm. "What have you got there, old-timer? Let me see those papers." He made a clumsy grab, but decades of handling contracts had taught me how to keep documents just out of reach. "Nothing for tonight, Brad." I kept my voice steady like I used to when dealing with difficult clients. "Tomorrow at 11, Denise Howard will present a special gift package for you and my daughter in the main ballroom." His pupils contracted to pinpoints, reminding me of a rattler sizing up its prey. "Gift package?" He barked out a laugh that echoed down the empty hallway. "Well, I've got a gift for you. The county already knows the ranch changed hands, signed, sealed, delivered." He tapped his temple with a finger. "Maybe your memory's not what it used to be, Pops." Behind him, I caught a glimpse of my daughter still in her wedding dress, mascara streaking her cheeks. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Before I could say anything else, Brad slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. The walk back to the lobby felt longer than my morning fence checks used to. "Remember when you could walk the whole property line before sunrise, old man?" Those days seemed far away now. I found a quiet corner and called Denise. She answered despite the late hour, like the professional she'd always been. "Walter, I got your email with the photos. This is exactly what we prepared for. Talk me through tomorrow again," I said, sinking into one of those oversized lobby chairs. "I want every detail right. You'll take the head table. I'll arrive at exactly 11 with the documents. We let them settle in, let them get comfortable. Then we spring the trap." She paused. "Are you sure you want to do this publicly?" My jaw tightened. "He humiliated me in front of 200 people. Seems fair to return the favor." We went over the timing 3 more times before I headed up to the room Carl had booked for me. Bless him for thinking ahead. The bed was harder than my own at home, but after the day I'd had, I could have slept on concrete. The alarm buzzed at 7. Rain clouds were breaking up outside my window, sending sharp beams of sunlight across. The city felt like an omen, though I'd never been one for signs and portents. Give me solid lumber and true measurements any day. I took my time getting ready. Careful strokes with the razor, steady hands with the tie, the same way I'd approached every important job in my life. The forged deed went on top of the folder, that false signature staring up at me like an insult. Made my way down to the ballroom early. The breakfast setup was in full swing, servers darting around with coffee urns, the clatter of plates and silverware like hammer strikes on a job site. Reminded me of Margaret, how she used to have breakfast ready every morning before I headed out to work. The coffee here wouldn't be half as good as hers. I positioned 2 chairs at the head table myself. One standard issue, one with that father of the bride ribbon still attached from yesterday. Seemed fitting somehow, the tie. The guests started filtering in around 10:30. I recognized faces from the wedding, saw them whispering behind hands, probably still chuckling about my tumble. Let them laugh. Soon they'd have something else to gossip about. At 10:55, Brad and my daughter made their entrance. He was wearing the same suit from yesterday, though considerably more wrinkled. She had changed into a blue dress I didn't recognize, her eyes still puffy from crying. I watched the servers circulate with coffee and juice, watched forks hover over plates of eggs Benedict. The clock on the wall ticked toward 11, each minute like a nail being driven home. Right at 11, Denise Howard's heels clicked across the ballroom floor like a judge's gavel. Her silver hair caught the morning light as she made her way to the head table, leather folio tucked under one arm. You could have heard a nail drop in that room. "Good morning, everyone," she said, arranging her materials with the precision I'd always admired in her. "I'm Denise Howard, the Pierce family attorney. I've been asked to present some important documents this morning." Brad's smirk twitched at the corner of his mouth. He probably thought this was the transfer he'd been counting on. I kept my face neutral, the way I used to when inspecting questionable work on a job site. Denise opened her folio with a practiced motion. First, we have a life estate reservation executed and notarized yesterday evening at 8:42 p.m. She lifted the document. This instrument ensures Mr. Pierce maintains complete control of his property during his lifetime. The confusion started small, just a few furrowed brows among the guests, but when Denise continued to the transfer on death limitations, I saw Brad's fingers tighten around his water glass. Additionally, Denise said, her voice carrying to every corner, there's a special provision that I need to draw particular attention to. She adjusted her reading glasses. Any attempt to transfer property interests prior to the legal execution of these documents automatically triggers immediate voidance of the transferee's standing. That's when I reached into my folder and laid the forged deed beside Denise's papers. The room went so quiet, you could hear the ice settling in water glasses. County filing number 2023-4891, Denise announced, pointing to the timestamp. Submitted 2 days ago, bearing what appears to be Mr. Pierce's signature. She paused, letting that sink in. Under Texas Penal Code Section 3221, forgery of a financial instrument is a state jail felony. Filing false instruments under Section 37001 carries similar penalties. My daughter's hands started trembling so hard her fork clattered against her plate. The sound cut through me like a bandsaw hitting a nail. This would hurt her, I knew that, but sometimes you have to tear out rot to save the structure. The trigger clause has been activated, I said, keeping my voice as level as the bubbles in my old spirit level. The attempted theft has voided any claim you might have had, Brad. Would you care to explain the identical signatures? Denise asked, sliding a comparison sheet across the table. The forensic overlay showed every matching curve and dot. Brad's chair scraped back so fast it nearly toppled. His face had gone from country club tan to blotchy red in seconds. This is ridiculous. Everyone does pre-signings these days. It's standard practice. In real estate, Denise's eyebrow arched. Perhaps you'd like to share that perspective with the district attorney. Whispers rippled through, the room like wind through dry grass. I caught fragments. Forged documents. Tried to steal the ranch? The chair incident yesterday. You can't prove anything, Brad snarled, but his voice had the hollow sound of a wall after you found the termite damage. Denise laid out 3 more documents, each with highlighted sections. Actually, we can. Would you like me to continue with the evidence, or shall we discuss how to minimize your exposure? The room had become a courtroom, every guest a juror. Brad's confident facade cracked like cheap veneer. He kept opening and closing his mouth, but nothing came out except short, panicked breaths. I glanced at my daughter. Even with tears streaming down her face, she sat straight-backed, her mother's posture. She was finally seeing what I'd tried to warn her about, and it was breaking her heart. But better a broken heart now than a broken life later. I have copies for everyone, Denise said, nodding to her assistant who had materialized with a stack of bound presentations, including the district attorney's office, which should be receiving theirs right about... She checked her watch. Now, let me walk you through the timeline, Denise said, laying out another set of documents. Her calm voice made Brad's heavy breathing sound even more ragged. The county clerk's electronic logs show the deed was uploaded at 3:47 p.m. on Friday. I watched Brad's throat work as he swallowed. You see that kind of nervous tick in men when they realize they've been caught dead to rights. Like the time I caught a subcontractor trying to pass off cheap pine as cedar on a luxury build. The upload came from an IP address registered to Elite Events Planning, specifically the laptop used for wedding coordination. Denise paused, letting that detail sink in. The same laptop that had access to Mr. Pierce's personal documents during wedding preparations. The whispers started at the back tables first, then rippled forward like a wave. I saw recognition dawn on faces, people connecting dots they hadn't noticed before. But the most interesting detail, Denise continued, is the notary stamp. It's registered to a Patricia Chen in Houston. She produced a magnified image. Ms. Chen reported her stamp stolen 3 weeks ago, quite different from Carl Mendez's valid stamp on our current documents. The maitre d' had drifted closer to our table, his professional mask slipping as he glanced between the chair I was sitting in and Brad. Yesterday's prank didn't seem so funny now. I caught his eye and gave him a slight nod. He'd be getting a subpoena soon enough. I cleared my throat. "For the record," I said, loud enough to carry, "I will be pursuing criminal charges." The words tasted like steel, but sometimes you have to drive the nail all the way home. "And speaking of records," I turned to the AV tech in the corner, Carl's nephew, as it happened, and gave him the signal we'd arranged. The background music faded and the projector hummed to life. "The venue has excellent security," I continued as the image filled the screen. "Multiple angles, high definition, and—" The still frame clicked into place. Perfect timing. There it was, frozen in pixels. Brad's face twisted in that mean grin as he yanked my chair away. His expression was worse than I remembered. Pure cruelty, caught in the act. The gasps around the room had a different flavor now. Not shock or amusement like yesterday, but disgust. "Elder abuse," someone muttered from the middle tables. The word caught like wildfire. Fraud. Thief. Disgraceful. My daughter's chair scraped back. Her hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming, and she bolted for the restroom. Part of me wanted to follow her, but some wounds need time before you can dress them. Brad lunged toward the AV setup, face purple with rage. "Turn that off." He grabbed for the projector cord, but a firm hand caught his shoulder. The hotel's security chief, I'd briefed him earlier, stepped between Brad and the equipment. "Sir, I need you to step back." Near the door, I spotted two uniformed officers conferring with Denise. She'd timed their arrival perfectly. Present, but not intrusive. Ready, but not aggressive. The kind of planning I'd always appreciated in her legal work. I gathered my papers into the folio, taking my time. Let everyone see who was steady and who was scrambling. "We'll complete the remaining signatures after brunch," I announced to the room. "The groom's presence won't be required." The whispers had grown to a steady murmur. Every phone in the room seemed to be out, photos being snapped, messages flying. Brad's reputation was unraveling faster than cheap stitching in a storm. I gave Denise a slight nod as she spoke with the officers. She returned it with the same precision she brought to everything. Then I turned back to face the room, my hands steady on the folder containing proof of every lie, every scheme, every cruel little power play. You want to know something about building things? Sometimes the most important part isn't what you construct, it's what you tear down first. Rot can hide behind pretty walls, but once you expose it to daylight, everyone can see the truth. In a quiet conference room off the main ballroom, I settled into the familiar routine of signing papers. The scratch of my pen felt satisfying. Each signature another nail in the coffin of Brad's schemes. Denise laid out document after document with surgical precision, while Carl stood ready with his notary stamp. "Initial here, date here," Denise guided, tapping each spot. "This reinforces the trigger clause and formally records the fraudulent attempt." My hand was steady. Funny how that works. When you're doing something right, age just melts away. "Like framing a house," I said to Carl. "Every joint has to be true." "Speaking of true," Carl replied, pressing his stamp onto another page, "I think I hear some commotion out there." Through the door's window, I could see the officers approaching Brad. One held out papers, while the other positioned himself carefully between Brad and the exits. Brad's face went from red to white as he scanned the notice to appear. "Forgery charges," Denise explained quietly, "plus filing false instruments. The DA's office was quite interested in the evidence." I nodded, signing the final page. Around Brad, phones had appeared like flowers after rain. The still frame of him yanking my chair was already making rounds. I could see guests tilting screens toward each other, heads shaking. The whispers had that special tone that meant reputations were being shredded. "Dad," my daughter stood in the doorway, makeup streaked, hands twisting together. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have seen, should have known." Part of me wanted to gather her up like when she was small, but some breaks need clean edges to heal right. "Talk to Denise," I said gently. "She'll help sort things out." Denise stepped forward, her manner shifting from attorney to counselor. "Let's find somewhere quiet to discuss your options," she said, guiding my daughter toward her office. I gathered my copies, originals safely headed to the county clerk with Carl, and made my way to the service corridor. Seemed fitting to exit the way I'd been forced to enter, but this time by choice. The noon air hit clean and fresh. Rain clouds burned away to leave October sky blue as my old work shirts. The drive home felt different. Maybe it was knowing the ranch was secure, or maybe it was just the weight lifting off my shoulders with each mile. I pulled up to the gate, my gate, no question now, and walked the fence line like I had thousands of times before. The mailbox stood at attention, same as ever. Inside was what I'd been waiting for, a certified packet from the county clerk. My fingers didn't shake as I opened it, but my chest felt full as I pulled out the papers. There it was in black and white, official acknowledgement of the voided transfer, and below that my deed. My name clear as day, the stamp bright and crisp as a new dollar. Legal, binding and solid as the cedar post I leaned against. You know what's funny about revenge? Everyone thinks it's best served cold, but that's not quite right. The best revenge is served true, like a plumb line or a level foundation. Let the facts speak plain, let justice work clean, and what falls will fall square. I set the deed against that old post, letting the sun warm the paper and my work-worn hands. Somewhere in town, Brad was watching his world crack along the fault lines he'd laid himself. But here, with my land under my feet and my name on that deed, none of that mattered. Dignity, I said to the quiet afternoon, outlasts every thief.